the world that we live in today, it's so important to be raising boys that have appreciation of beauty and love of learning and kindness and generosity and vulnerability. And I know that there are a lot of stereotypes on masculinity out there, and I think Sterling really is breaking those stereotypes with the way in which they're trying to educate boys. And I like the well-balanced approach of Sterling. So, the academics are obviously there, but then there's also so much more that you get out of your Sterling experience.
I'm Glenn Herbert, and I'm an editor with Our Kids. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading private schools to gain insights into their programs, culture, traditions, and leadership. This includes insights from parents, alumni, and administrators. This is the Our Kids Insider Perspective.
We started off at the Our Kids Expo, looking at different school options. I think we hadn't intended on sending our boys so early on in their education to a private school, but I think once we started seeing what some of the options were out there, we thought, well, I think this is something we need to investigate further. And so we had an opportunity to attend an open house at Sterling Hall, and I think we immediately fell in love. We walked through the hallways, and it was such a right fit. It was warm and welcoming for us, and it really it made us feel at home. And I think for me as a parent, bringing two young children at the time, it was so important to me. And so I felt, for our journey was quite interesting because I didn't really feel the need to look much further. I think between the warm admissions welcome that we received and everything we saw of the school, the wonderful intermediate boys that walked us through the halls, it just felt right. And I think that made our decision easy. Well, I would say I've definitely seen personal growth in both my boys. So if I think back now to almost over 4 years ago, I brought a 3-year-old to the school, and they're quite young at 3. He was a late birthday, and I have seen his confidence grow, and I can only thank the faculty for their dedication and passion and all the encouragement that they provide. The fact that Sterling is this safe space for boys to sort of learn and be vulnerable, and so I've seen so much growth in him. So I definitely think his introduction to Sterling Hall has just had an enormous impact on who he is as a boy. And really the same goes for my other son. I think Sterling has a very strong character development program. And so I've seen, things like perseverance and humility and leadership skills be the sorts of things that they talk about even at a young age. So I would definitely say we've seen sort of that personal growth based on their experience at Sterling. Absolutely. So I think again, because you're bringing young boys, I think it's important to understand how boys learn, and I think that's where Sterling really does specialize in the boy. They understand that it's both a physical and mental education that needs to happen. And so in the primary years, you do get a lot of emphasis on character development, which really, quite honestly, in the world that we live in today, it's so important to be raising boys that have appreciation of beauty and love of learning and kindness and generosity and vulnerability. And I know that there are a lot of stereotypes on masculinity out there, and I think Sterling really is breaking those stereotypes with the way in which they're trying to educate boys. And I like the well-balanced approach of Sterling. So, the academics are obviously there, but then there's also so much more that you get out of your Sterling experience. And so I see that very strongly in the primary division. And they've got lovely incentives for the boys. So they've got a lovely Sterling Star program, excuse me. And boys earn a Sterling Star when they've shown, certain character strengths, and, they've got lunch with the principal. And so they really, from a young age can talk about these which are pretty big concepts, I think, for young children. And I would also say that it's a warm and welcoming environment. So it's an opportunity where boys in their youngest years of education are encouraged to take risks. Because in risk taking, it's where you really grow. And I think when Sterling creates that safe space for boys to learn, you that's kind of where the magic happens. That's where you see the growth in the boy. So I would say Sterling's primary years are really fundamental. And I have a lot of great things to say about the intermediate experience as well. But I think in my experience, because I brought two boys in primary, I can just see all that growth that's happening, and I'm grateful for it. So I would have to say, coming off a year that we, are coming out of, I think it's the relationships. I really think the bonds they have with, teachers, with staff, with the other boys is so important. I do believe, and I've come to learn that boys are relational learners, and so the fact that they've got those strong bonds and connections with others, I think it's something that they really appreciate, and they enjoy. But I would also say that my boys, and they're doing some of this right now, actually, as we speak, they do a lot of spirit rallies and community building amongst the boys. So it's quite nice, but each boy belongs to a house. And those houses have friendly competition throughout the year, and they do different sort of activities. And the boys just love it. They love all this sort of spirit rally element to the school. And it's really exciting for them. So I think that's something else that they really love about their school community. Oh, yes. No, that is really hard. Oh, it's because there's so many elements. I do think Sterling is very well balanced. I think we've got great leadership through our principal. I think I probably will narrow it down if I have to pick one to the passionate and dedicated teaching faculty. I think these teachers are absolutely incredible. I think I've seen the special mark a teacher can leave on a boy when he really challenges him to his fullest potential. And that can only come from a teacher who truly cares. And so each year I walk away knowing that these teachers love our boys and they want the best for them, and they want them to grow, not just academically, but emotionally. And so if I have to pick just one thing, which is extremely hard, I think I'm gonna say the faculty. That's a tough one. And I don't know that I'm going to give you anything really concrete today in terms of something that I'd like to see improved. I would say that what rests well with me is that Sterling has a growth mindset. So I do find because the school is small, it's nimble. If it needs to change or adapt, it will. And so I do find that if I do have a question, if a concern comes up throughout the year, I know I can reach teachers, I know I can talk to the administration, and I feel like I'm heard as a parent. So I'm not sure that quite answers your question, but I do think that as things change, the fact that I see Sterling time and again be flexible on their approach is really all I could ask for from a school. You're right, no school is perfect, but I think when you've got that growth mindset, you're in a good home, you're in a good place. Okay, so the school obviously focuses on character and community and learning, and I really see all of that. But I guess if I have to pick a value that really resonates with me, it's how they teach resilience, and the generosity. So, for example, our principal is often mentioning to the boys, big boys look out for themselves, but bigger boys look out for each other. And this idea that it's not just about you, and it's about caring for your fellow classmates. It's about being, generous with your time and really kind of putting yourself out there for others. But it's also this idea that, resilience, mistakes will happen and you should pick yourself up, dust yourself off and get back into it. And I think because Sterling provides that safe environment, children feel that they can take risks. And to me, as the mother of young boys, I want them doing those sorts of things right now. I want them exploring and trying new things so that, they can figure out what are their passions and what do they want to do when they get older. And it's a journey. So I like that the school values these sorts of things, and I see it in the day to day. Yeah, so I think Sterling Hall attracts like-minded parents that have similar values to the school, really. So from what I can see from the parent perspective, I think, I touched on the fact that there's a strong parents association, and I think that's important because I often say, it's not just a school for my boys, it's a school for our entire family, and I truly believe that. I've made long lasting friendships at the school. There's a lot of opportunities to get involved, and so I would say that parents really have these values of community and commitment and devotion, and you will see, like I mentioned, parents getting involved in all sorts of fun spirit rallies. But it's the kind of school where parents walk the halls in a typical year. And I think that's really nice. It isn't, perhaps a typical curbside drop off pickup. Parents are really encouraged to come into the halls and have conversations with teachers. And so I do find that there's this sort of warm and welcoming environment among the parent community. And I would also say that another value I see is sort of this generosity or this philanthropy. I think parents volunteer their time in so many ways, and you see that. And I think it's so important to get involved in a school where your boys are learning day to day. And so you see a lot of activity from parents in a philanthropic way, giving of their time, of donations or fundraising or whatever it may be. So I would say those are the sorts of values I see in parents, and I think we do have a very strong and supportive parent community. And at the end of the day, it's really all about the boys, and I think we all understand that. Yeah, I think both boys have shown a lot of resiliency this year, and I'd say they're particularly proud of their tech skills. They put me to shame at this point. I'm okay to admit that. I think the amount of learning they've done through educational apps within class time and the way they navigate, and it's really, it's a language, computer literacy, and I think that both boys have really excelled in it, and it's really kind of built a certain confidence in them. But I'd have to pick one project this year. My son worked on his family tree, and I thought it was really lovely because it brought up great conversation about identity. Who are we? Who are others? How do we accept? Where do we come from? What is our culture? And our history. And it took a little research even from grandparents to kind of help out, to map out that family tree. And so I think it was a lovely project, and I know my son was really proud of the finished result, and was very proud to present to his class and his teacher. So I'd say maybe one of those projects for this year was one of the big ones for him. Yeah, so I did touch on it a little bit before, but I'm happy to elaborate. I think we have really strong leadership at the school. And they're ready to communicate to us. So, for example, even just last night, we had a town hall where they're trying to walk us through what next year might look like, even prior to knowing what the government might mandate. And I think just that sense of communication, that open line of communication, is so important. So I think the administration does that at every opportunity, and I definitely feel very comfortable at Sterling knowing that we have that strong administration. And in terms of the faculty and staff, I mean, we've just had such great experiences with the teachers. I really think they care about the boys. I think they're knowledgeable. They're constantly innovating, which I think is important in this day and age. I think they're bringing up new ideas, and the things that my boys talk about. I mean, I'm wowed. I learn through them, and so the credit is to the teachers, and they're passionate about learning, and they love learning, and so I know that they're getting a great experience within their classes, and again, that's just credit to an incredible faculty that Sterling has. I would definitely recommend this school. And I think for me, the sense of community and belonging is number one. I think it's not just the boys, as I mentioned, but also us as their parents. My daughter often jokes around that she belongs to the school, and we often remind her that she doesn't, but she really feels a part of it. And I think that's credit to Sterling for being so welcoming. I think another aspect that I would kind of focus on when I'm talking to a prospective family that might be looking at Sterling, I'd say it's balanced. So they've got a good handle on the academics. They work on character development, and so that emotional intelligence. And they have, a wonderful campus with a lot of opportunities, a lot of extracurricular. So it's just such a well-rounded school. I really think it meets the various needs of a boy. And so that would be another area I'd focus on. And then if I'd have to pick a third, I'm really happy with the families that we have at the school. And so I think that kind of goes a little bit back to the community piece, but I think now, focusing maybe more on the Parents Association and all the opportunities to connect, whether that's through socials or through fundraising opportunities, making the boys happy with different raffles and cookie kits and things like that. And just, that camaraderie that parents, show through the Parents Association to me, I think is a really nice touch as well. So I think I would probably focus on those three. As a parent, you really need to focus on what's best for your particular child and really understand what are their needs and what is the institution that is going to meet that need. And I think sometimes there can be a lot of, noise during application season. And sometimes you've got to tune that out and really just think what's best for you and your family. What are the values of the school? How do they handle conflict resolution? What is their character development program like? How do they support boys in their learning, or whether they need enrichment opportunities? So I think these are the sorts of questions as a parent you should probably be asking yourself when you're looking at different schools. And then at the end, when you feel that those values or those important points align with your family and your son or daughter, I think then you'll know. You'll know what school speaks to you in that way. And I think, for us, we very much just had such a welcoming feeling when we entered the halls. It was just such a nice, warm, and engaging and inclusive community. And to me, that was extremely important when I'm bringing such young children to a school. So I would say that's probably some of the things I would talk to a prospective parent about, just to keep in mind as they're going through their search, because there's so much information that comes at you, and sometimes you can get bogged down in certain aspects. And I think if you kind of push that all aside, really focus on the values and whether that school aligns with yours.
For more information about this school, you can visit their profile at ourkids.net.